Resident Evil 2 smashed it yet again, selling just shy of 5 million copies. The series was on a massive high and 2 sequels were put into the works. The first was a fast-paced demon-slaying action game which the team thought was too much of a departure for the series, so it ended up being Devil May Cry, another series I love and need to cover. The other was a Sega Dreamcast exclusive which became Code Veronica, but that took a while to make, so to fill in the gap, Capcom created a side story game for the PS1, and that is what became the real Resident Evil 3.
Listen, he's coming for us. We're both gonna die.
What are you saying?
You'll see.
You played as your girl Jill once again, and in Resident Evil 3, Jill is proper hard, mate, and she is the only person to ever look good with their jumper tied to their waist. In the first, she was a bit of a dope, but she's prepared this time. To prove that point, it starts with Jill blowing up her apartment building, and from there, you take her on her journey to escape Raccoon City. The plot took you right across the city on a relentless chase. Along the way, Jill encounters the Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasure Service, or the UBCS, which introduced you to the game's second playable character, Carlos, who teamed up with Jill at points. Which brings me on to the first reason I prefer 3 to 2. You actually saw a lot more of Raccoon City, and it looked like a city in despair as well. The pre-rendered backgrounds had overturned cars and buses, glass all over the streets, dead bodies, blood stains. It sucked you right into Raccoon City. And the environments you visit actually felt connected. Unlike 2, they were places you would actually find in a city, and it all goes towards creating a better sense of place, something Resident Evil 1 excelled at. In Resident Evil 1 and 2, you got to know your surroundings, they felt like home, and you got somewhat comfortable in them. However, in 3, you didn't have much time to take in those locations because you're mostly hurried through them screaming thanks to the game's star, Nemesis, who, just like Mr. X in Resident Evil 2, turned up at the most inconvenient times. He was fast, hit like a truck, and would tear through zombies to make a line straight for you. Sometimes you could use that to your advantage though. Even going through a door loading screen wouldn't save you. Once you go to the next camera angle, he would come charging through at full pelt. You had to dash through these places you weren't familiar with, frantically looking for the exit to get away from Nemesis or a wide enough area to take him on. Though bringing him down only brought you some precious unmolested time and parts to upgrade your guns if you're playing on hard. In the last 2 parts, I spoke about my personal scariest bits in each game. Well, for 3, I'm just going to play it. You'll probably be able to guess which bit it is. That was just pure and simple horrible. The first time I played the game, I ran from Nemesis outside the police station and I thought, well, he will be back, but I didn't expect it that soon. Sometimes you would enter a room and get ambushed by zombies or worse, and then Nemesis turns up, adding more to your stress. This is why I think it's the scariest Resident Evil. It's the one that's most likely to give you an anxiety attack, since you were always on edge wondering when he would appear. That situation I just described might seem a bit unfair, especially with Resident Evil's controls and limited ammo, but Resident Evil 3 was a lot more action oriented compared to 1 and 2, and it threw bones your way to deal with Nemesis and the hordes. You could now perform quick dodges and 180-degree turns, which were so useful, but you could end up dodging an attack straight into another one. At first, Nemesis is terrifying, but as you go through the game, your confidence and arsenal grows and the cat and mouse dynamic shifts, Nemesis starts to become an annoyance rather than a panic-inducing threat, which is a common pitfall for a lot of horror games with the hunter versus hunted dynamic. But just as you get to that point, you're near the end of the game and Nemesis evolves, shaking things up a bit. Then, right at the end, when you pump Nemesis full of magnum rounds and Jill does her sassy line before finishing him off, you feel like you've earned it and really outmatched a dangerous foe.
You want stars? I'll give you stars.
It was a much quicker paced game which suited the situation Carlos and Jill were in, which in turn made it feel more exciting. The game felt like a sequel that expanded on the originals and took it to new heights rather than just iterating like 2. Everything good about the other entries was still present, the sound design and music again were top notch. The Nemesis scream followed by a pulse pounding theme track still gets my heart going now. The resource management and clever puzzles came back too. The voice acting carried on the trend of being a bit poo, but Jill's voice actor weirdly worked. She gives a lot of sass which goes with her new confidence and experience in dealing with BOWs. She especially sasses Carlos, who sounds like a complete twat every time he opens his mouth. If you ask someone to do a racist impression of a Mexican, that's kind of what Carlos sounds like. Thankfully, Jill twats him at one point. It innovated in areas that mattered. They were all over the place. The previously mentioned quick turn and dodge, the ability to mix ammo with the gunpowder dotted about the sitter, and the choices at certain points in the game involving Nemesis. None of them have an instant game over, thankfully, but they did change the course of the game a little bit, but nothing too dramatic. At least it was something to add a bit of replay value to the game. That's something this game lacked though: content. Resident Evil 2 was a massive game, 4 scenarios, 2 characters and extra modes, whereas 3 just has the one character, well 2 I suppose, though you barely played as Carlos. Mercenaries was the only extra mode. It was another time trial based minigame where you had to get to the extraction point, with kills awarding extra time. You earned money after each run to save up and buy extras for the main game like infinite ammo guns. And there's not many new monsters. It's great whilst it lasts, and I understand that Nemesis himself constantly tailing you for over the 3 to 4 hours it takes to finish the game would become really annoying. But I'd rather have a game that takes risks and feels fresh rather than another Resident Evil 2 type game. It's good that this was originally a side project before being bumped up to a fully fledged numbered entry, because that probably allowed the team to get creative with the series conventions. If this game was going to be a real numbered sequel from the start, I bet we would have seen a more safe entry, which is what I suppose Code Veronica was. Not to say it was poo, because, and this might surprise you, Code Veronica is the only one I've never finished. In fact, I've never played it, even though I've owned it for years. You would think the guy doing a retrospective on these games would have, wouldn't you? Suppose it's a good excuse to play it though, innit?